I'll call to order a council meeting. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Worship. First item are minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, November 17th, 2014. The recommendation is that council approve those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Aspenson, seconded by Councillor Nicholson. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 2 are minutes of the Riverview Lands Advisory Committee meeting held Tuesday, October 21st. The recommendation is that council receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Hodge, seconded by Councillor Reid. All in favour? Opposed? Oops. Councillor O'Neill.
Just a question on that. In the minutes, it's I guess it's on page 4, the top one, letters of endorsement. Who are these letters of endorsement from? Oh, where was it? Where does it say that?
Not until we get to the item.
Huh?
Right.
Pardon me?
Okay, these.
The city received from fellow cities.
It would be interesting, since they are coming to the city and not just to the committee, that we would have those itemized so we'd know who these came from in the future.
Mr. Dumont.
Unless we've already seen them at council.
Mr. Dumont.
Thank you very much, through the chair. Those letters have kind of come in intermittently over a period of several months. Surrey, North Van City, a number of municipalities. We put it out to all the Greater Vancouver municipalities to write letters of endorsement. I can get a list of who they are that have sent us those letters. I believe they were circulated to council when they came in, but they've been over the last several months.
Okay, so that's what I was unclear of as well. I thought when I read this they were just letters that were sent just to the committee. I would have liked to have seen them as a council, and if they've come to the council already, then I might even have them in my file at home. Thank you.
Thank you. And the motion is the minutes. All in favour? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Moving on to items from this evening's public hearing. Item 3 relates to City of Coquitlam Zoning Bylaw Text Amendment Bylaw number 4515-2014. The recommendation is that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to Zoning Bylaw Text Amendment Bylaw number 4515-2014.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Aspenson. All in favour? Opposed? That motion carries unanimously.
Item 4, City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4505-2014 relating to 964 Charland Avenue. The recommendation is that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4505-2014.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill. Seconded by Councillor Reid. All in favour? Opposed? Councillor Wilson, Councillor Aspenson, Councillor Nicholson, and Councillor Hodge are opposed, and Councillor Zerillo are opposed. The motion fails. Councillor Reid.
Thank you.
One moment. When I'm not certain we're dealt with the last one yet.
Okay.
I'm just. No, I understand that. No, because there's an opportunity to move second and third or something like that if someone wanted to. Seeing none, Councillor Reid.
I am going to excuse myself again from this next item.
Yep.
And I just wanted to point out to staff that nowhere does it say the registered owner on these documents. So there's no way until I saw the on table tonight I could have known this. Thank you.
I was actually looking at the same documents and trying to figure out where the registered owner was, and I noticed that it was on the table documents. Councillor Reid excuses herself. Madam Clerk.
Item 5, City of Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4513-2014 relating to the property at 928 Walls Avenue. Recommendation is that Council give second, third, and fourth and final readings to Zoning Amendment Bylaw number 4513-2014.
So moved. Second.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Hodge. Councillor O'Neill. One moment.
I'm on? Good, thank you. Some reluctance on council, and I can understand, given some of the neighborhood questioning on this, but I'm going to support this based on two criteria, I guess, and one was an overarching one, and it's something that I've talked about quite a bit on council over the last 3 years that I've sat in this chair, and that is the need to have a diverse selection of homes in the community, something that I think is one of the most responsible and efficient ways that we can have affordable housing. It was said during the public hearing that if this doesn't go ahead, there's a good chance that a large home will be built on this. And large homes in this area are extremely expensive. I really believe and support the city's move as manifested in the official community plan and as enunciated many times around this table, to give people housing choices, to whether it's a duplex, a triplex, quad home arrangements, whether it's allowing for the subdivision of a land property like this. I think our responsibility is as a forward-looking one, where we respond to the needs, the growing needs of people, families here who are seeing their children grow up and fearing their children won't have a place to live. We can help them find places to live in our community, but only if we have the courage to go ahead with things like this, which there is no doubt in my mind that this subdivision would allow for more affordable housing. It's still going to be expensive housing. There's not cheap housing anywhere in Metro Vancouver, but it's going to be more affordable. And I think that's a key thing here. The second point that I want to raise just goes with the integrity of the official community plan here and of the planning process that went into that, the respect to the dozens, the hundreds of people who participated in that plan. And I was at some of those meetings, and I was sitting around this table when council adopted that plan as well. If we believe in that plan, if we believe in what the people told us about that plan, and if we also believe that we are committed to, and I think everybody here talks the talk, of providing affordable housing and housing choices, then we've got to walk the walk. And that's why I'll be supporting this.
Yep. I'm in a similar position. I'm left with a long process, and I actually sought out the record of the process for the Millardville Neighborhood Plan. It was 4 public open houses, 2 public lectures, 1 specifically for housing choices. It was 2 public workshops, 1 specifically for housing choices. Participation in a number of public events like Festival du Bois, multiple meetings with the Millardville Commercial and Cultural Revitalization Advisory Committee, public display at Place des Arts, meetings with commercial property owners, with on-site meetings, communications, 6 newsletters over the course of the process, 7,300 homes each, homes and businesses, including not-for-profit institutional providers in the area, property owners, newspaper advertisements for each of the 10 public events, including the digital public engagement pilot, distribution throughout the Millardville Plan email listserv, promotion of all public events on the Millardville Residents Association website, printed copies of relevant materials everywhere you could think of, public bus shelter ads, the city's webpage, social media. And what happens is we reach out as much as we possibly can, and we know that people lead busy lives, but they don't engage in the process sometimes. And yet the goal here that council, and I mentioned it earlier, the goal of council and the goal of public institutions across the Lower Mainland is how do we make sure we have a wide range of affordable housing options across the Lower Mainland. Now, our choices on this one are a $1.8 million home, or 2 smaller homes with suites. And a $1.8 million home would have a suite, or perhaps 2, as sometimes happens with the bigger ones. And those are our choices as public policy. And I recognize that one of the people on the street has come out to speak to us tonight. with signatures on a petition. We often see signatures on a petition, but there's not too much engagement in that. I'm not belittling at all the neighborhood's perspective on this, but I'm also challenged as a community. We're challenged with how do we make sure that we embrace affordable family living for families. $1.8 million per house doesn't do it, and we see that in large sections of Coquitlam where what's one of the big complaints is we're building all these monster houses. We have tried to do a carrot and stick approach, whereas the carrot is let's find some other option that will allow us more affordable choices in these options, particularly on a cul-de-sac where you don't have through traffic, particularly on a street where you've got rear lane access. There's all kinds of things about this that make it really easy to contemplate a higher density. Not necessarily an enormous increase in density, because we do know that some of the monster homes have a similar number of households sometimes in them. So we're left with our choices. One expensive home with a suite, or two not as expensive homes with 2 suites. Some more affordable choices. I certainly contemplate and empathize with the neighborhood, although I'm not certain we actually heard that much from the neighborhood. I heard the concerns of a resident on that street, primarily about the house next door to them, the property, and the implications of this rezoning on their neighbor, the house next to them. And so I'm probably going to have to weigh in on the side of this enormous process that we did to contemplate a wider range of affordable choices in Millardville. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, to me, this one and the one in Charland are extremely similar, and they're very difficult. And I'm torn as well. We talk about affordable housing. Well, these individual smaller houses are still going to be probably $800,000. So I don't count those as affordable housing units. So let's, I think the suites become affordable for sure, but I don't really count the houses as affordable when we talk about affordable housing. I think a duplex fits much better on both of those lots, and it's a little cheaper to build, and I think you just get a much better fit in the community with the duplex rather than 2 single-family houses. This area is experiencing dramatic changes, and I mean, I appreciate you reading the list of things that the city did in the consultation period on this community plan. I think what we need to do, though, when we reach out to people, when we advertise about new neighborhood plans and open houses, I think we need to be a little bit more clear with our residents about the impact that these changes may have. I've read a lot of our ads, and when we talk about updating the neighborhood plan and asking people to come out and give their input, but I don't think people get very motivated by reading that. But I think if we had a little bit more information in those ads, some to the effect of this could dramatically change your neighborhood, please get out and get involved, people might pay a little bit more attention, and maybe we'd get better consultation. We had a very similar situation in July with the Housing Choices application for Medor. We had a similar petition presented to council, and we also voted that down as well. So I don't think this is unprecedented. I don't think this is unreasonable. These are huge changes to the neighborhood, and I don't know what the right answer is, but I just don't feel good about it when you see that many names on a petition. So just basically, and the other thing is we are going to have huge parking issues. We have to deal with these parking issues better, I think, than we have. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Councillor Nicholson.
Worship. We did do extensive consultation. Our staff worked really hard, and I think our staff do a great job of community consultation compared to a great many other communities. But what we see tonight is that an awful lot of people didn't know what was going on. And we have to remember that people in the city are not developers, they're not planners, they're not engineers. They're living their lives and trying to get along, and they read, there's so much stuff comes through your mailbox that you put straight into the blue box. And sometimes material from the city looks like that's where it goes too. So we try, we make a really substantial effort, and I applaud it. But we make a substantial effort as well to try to get people out to vote. And it went up significantly this last time. But still, for all that effort and for how important, certainly 9 of us around this table and at least 2 people in the audience feel it's really, really important. Apparently, an awful lot of people didn't get the message, didn't see it as important, and a lot of people in our community don't appreciate the significance of what they're being asked to give an opinion on until someone walks up and says, here's what I plan to do next door to your house. And they only hear that because we make the proponent tell them, put up signs, that kind of thing. So now we've got their attention, and now they understand what the planning process produced and what that opens the door to probably don't completely appreciate the choices that they're faced with. They're faced with one, and they don't like it. The alternative is probably not a lot more attractive, but they've come out pretty substantially to tell us they don't like this. The other challenge, and we saw this a year and a half ago on another project that we turned down, is the proponent didn't tell us anything. They didn't stand up and say, I heard all that, but, or anything like that. They didn't go out into that neighborhood themselves and say, here's what I'm planning to do. I know it's a challenge, but this will be good for the neighborhood. This is what will be good about it. It's going to be nice colors, and there's not going to be big families, and or whatever. Say whatever you can, but these are the people that you're going to end up selling your product next door to, or perhaps moving in next door to, and they deserve to have you tell them what you're planning to do and try to get you on side. If that kind of effort is made, it weighs heavily with me, and I don't see or hear it having been made. So I won't be able to support this. Thank you.
Councillor Hodge.
This one is another one that has been a challenge for me, because I really do want to support housing choices, and this is something that has come forward in the past few years. We're also having a discussion this spring about what to do about monster houses, and everybody who's opposed to monster houses is a lot of them are saying the same thing. We'd rather have 2 small houses with some space between them than one big house. So, if this doesn't go through, it's likely going to be a very large house here. On this particular street, that doesn't concern me, given that there's already some very large homes across the street. And this is a neighborhood that seems to have embraced large homes in this particular neighborhood. And if that's what they want, that's probably what they're going to end up getting if this remains a single-family lot. I wish we'd heard from more people in the neighborhood. I think one resident spoke very eloquently about the concerns on this for the neighbors. I had a chance to ask her if her preference was 2 small homes or 1 large home, and I heard her say 1 large home. I hope that the people who signed that petition realize that that's probably what's going to happen here, and I'm willing to go along with that, given that there's already a lot of large homes across the street anyway. Each application is dealt with individually. There's an OCP, there's a neighborhood plan in place that does allow for conversion to multifamily type homes, or RT and other options here, the RT1 and other options. So that does exist, and that was put in place at the neighborhood at the stage when the plans were being put in place. And so I think each application that comes forward with that in mind, but this is that last check when it comes to council. This is that last opportunity to say, is this really what we want for this specific lot? And my decision to not support this application is no means an indication of how I'm going to look at future applications in this neighborhood. I think each one gets weighed individually. This particular one sits across the street from 3 or 4 very large homes, and we heard from people in those homes that they prefer a similar style home across the street from them, and this is their neighborhood, and so I'm going to go along with their wishes. But I do want us to continue to look for ways that we can try to make homes more affordable. This, I had hoped, is one of the options and one of the tools in that toolbox, but we are increasingly getting these applications come forward and then being turned down. We've had, as Councillor Wilson said, we had one earlier this summer. I voted against that one because there was a lot of neighbors came out in that particular case. The one earlier tonight I thought is probably more suited to a duplex than what they're proposing. So I view each one of these on their individual merits, and as much as I do want to support the concept of smaller lots and more affordable homes, I think in this case, if the residents want to keep it as a large single family home, I'm okay with it because that's their wish. Thank you.
You, Councillor Rasmussen.
Well, thank you very much. This one I find different for traffic and parking issues, and on the other one on Charland. This one I think works. This is a long street. There is disbursement of the parking on the street. There isn't the same issue with a multi-family storied building across the way. There's differences here. When we looked at the petition, we had actually 10 addresses out of 27 that signed the petition. So it's about 1/3 of the residents, and we only heard from one person saying that they would prefer the larger houses. So we looked at that. So 10 of the people of the petition out of 27. We've moved into this area about consultation. We consult as much as we can. We can't force everybody to come out and partake, but we do the best we can in our consultation that we put out there to get the most. And we went on for, I think, almost 2 years on the Millardville consultation. We had some of the best turnouts in the gyms and everything of people coming out, one of the largest turnouts we've had. The issue has been about duplexes. One of our biggest things in previous councils has been people coming out opposing duplexes, far stronger than 2 single-family homes, worrying about being 4plexes. This council actually moved into one of the reasons for the housing choices was because of the rejection continually of duplexes in single-family neighborhoods. And that's why we went to the allowing of triplexes and 4plexes, because they can't have suites in them, and to bring that. Detached single-family homes, no, they're not affordable homes. They're above that. But this will create a detached home that is more reachable than a large home. Now, we've had large homes, and I don't like the term monster house. Nobody's ever defined to me on this whole issue of monster homes. I find it interesting that people that are concerned about monster homes and pushing this envelope are not willing to support smaller homes and 2 homes and lots for this type of issue. I'm not opposed to monster homes, and if like on the last house there, the petition had a good design. It's just there's other issues in that area. But they can go and build a large house, 6 feet on either property line, without coming to council, without any permits. And if people wish to do that, that's what they can do. I think that's a single-family home. Every home's allowed a suite. Our bylaw allows every house, whether new or old, to have a legal suite, one legal suite. I raised on council this year, earlier on, the issue of stronger enforcement, more proactive enforcement by the city on illegal suites. Right now, we don't have one complaint. That has to be 2 property owners complain for us to go out and investigate. I said that shouldn't be, and that's not a priority by this council. It was put down to a lower priority. I wanted greater enforcement of the second illegal suites that are going on in houses. And it's a work plan item. It's something I think we need to address as we move forward and we densify areas. If we're going to be splitting lots into 2 like this, we're allowing singles, we should only be allowing that 1 suite, and we should be proactive to protect neighborhoods, to make sure those second suites are not there. And when people complain, we should investigate. We should go back to what we used to do, is where staff at times would take staff time and would look at the sales listings of properties to see if somebody's listing a second suite in a house, or if it had no permit and it's not a legal suite and it doesn't have the proper permit to be a suite, they would go out and investigate and shut it down. So those things should be done, and I think we're hurting ourselves as we move forward in secondary suites by not doing that, because it's creating greater parking problems in the neighborhoods, and that's one of the biggest issues here. This one here in this street, I don't see the parking problems as being the same. There will be 6 parking stalls off the back on a lane on this one. There will be no driveway off the front, so there will be an extra parking spot off the front, and it's a longer street. It doesn't have the same density units and parking concerns and the other issues on the south side with the other issues in parking. So I can support this one moving forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No other speakers. The motion is second, third, and fourth readings. All in favor? All opposed? But Councillors Wilson, Zarrillo, Hodge, and Nicholson are opposed. The motion fails. We bring back Councillor Reid. Madam Clerk.
Item 6, fourth and final reading of Street Vending and Special Event Vending Amendment Bylaw number 4512, 2014. Recommendation is that Council give fourth and final reading to Street Vending and Special Event Vending Amendment Bylaw number 4512, 2014.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Hodge. Councillor Zarrillo.
Thank you. I just wanted to pass on appreciation to the staff working on this. I'm still not particularly comfortable with the $1,000 fee, but I really, really appreciate the compromise that came here. A lot of good work went behind this one, and I think this is going to be a really fun business that's going to grow in Coquitlam, and I look forward to using some of them over the summer months and at the event. So I just wanted to thank staff for that.
Okay. Motion before us. Fourth and final. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
No, just on the next item.
Madam Clerk.
Item 7 relates to the School District Number 43, 2014 eligible school site proposal. The recommendation is that Council, 1, accept the 2014 eligible school site proposal submitted by the Coquitlam School District, and 2, direct staff to continue to discuss several issues with School District 43 regarding the alignment of their capital plan with city plans set out in the report of the GM Planning and Development dated November 18th.
Moved by Councillor O'Neill, second by Councillor Hodge. Councillor Asmundson.
Well, thank you, and I thank staff for the issues, some of them they pointed out in this report. And the one issue I do have, and I guess it comes back to an issue that we've been trying to hammer down for when will School District 43 give us final clarity on all the school sites that they require on Burke Mountain?
Who wants that one?
Your Worship, we can't provide a full response to that now. As noted in the report, I guess the good news is there's more than enough school sites have been designated up there through the course of a number of neighborhood plans over the years. The program the school district is working with based on the CSP would see a fewer number of school sites. And with that, then I think there would be the opportunity to rationalize and maybe go back and revisit some of the sites that have been designated in the official community plan, maybe for some alternate use as well. We continue to work with the school district. I think there's some coordinated efforts right now between the city and the school district to see some of these schools actually achieve, because it's a growing community up there and there's interest in that. So as we succeed in those projects, we can have those sites firmed up, and other ones that are ultimately turned out to be necessary can then be reconsidered for some other use.
If I could add something to that, we have been working quite closely with the school board, and we've made some progress, albeit not enough, in terms of rationalizing what they absolutely do need. They have highlighted a couple of sites that they don't need, that we were going to be moving forward on. But unfortunately, I think what the public needs is to see some evidence that there will actually be schools and schools implemented in the not too distant future. We are planning to make it a high priority to work with the new school superintendent who has just been chosen, and I think all of council will be working with the new school board, which is significantly different than the old school board in terms of making significant progress on that. This report before you today is simply one small element in a big, big puzzle. We all know we have a lot of work to do, and we are certainly going to be putting a lot of energy into that in the coming months.
Well, thank you, but I guess for me and for the people that live up there, and the issue is that the province has said that the 7 designated sites the school board doesn't need. The school board needs only 4 sites. We have people buying up there on the thought that they may be or may not be buying beside a school site. And we need clarity for the development ourselves, for people moving in there. And we have been at the school board for over 2 years now or longer to give us some clarity on those 4 sites that they're going to need. Can we attach to this report a request to the school board that by the end of this year that they will have the remaining 3 sites? Because we now know the Smiling Creek Elementary School, but can we attach a friendly, I don't know if council will disagree, amendment to ask the school board by the end of this year to identify the 3 remaining school sites to give clarity in the planning for the city of Coquitlam and clarity for the people purchasing and living in the Burke Mountain development?
I think that would be a reasonable request to add as an additional recommendation, noting that it is still in their purview to finalize that. But if council feels that that's a statement that they want to make, this would be an appropriate time to make that request to the school board.
Well, I'll move that. Okay, do we need a vote, or do we just need to? Mayor?
Yeah.
Could it be a friendly amendment? Does it need to be a?
Why don't we do this? Why don't we set that one aside for now? And this is a statutory requirement, what's before us now, and we can deal with a letter to the school board, and I will take that as a motion that we'll set aside for just the time being as a letter to the school board. And do you have anything further on the eligible school sites proposal?
No, I think the staff's other points out about Fraser Mills and the other issues are quite accurate. I saw it was a mission of clarity that we need on Burke Mountain on those remaining sites. So we'll set that aside, and we will have that after this has been passed, then we'll raise that issue?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, and I'm not trying to diminish the priority
No,
of that.
that's procedure.
This is, from my perspective, school sites on Burke Mountain, schools on Burke Mountain is our highest priority in the next year. This is becoming urgent. We have control over almost every piece of infrastructure that goes into a new development, the road, sidewalks, pipes, the parks, the trails network, all of that. The only two that we don't have control over are schools and transit, and those are the only two that we don't have yet. So we need those schools up there. I mean, I went to bat with for School District 43 to get an option out of the province when they were selling their land so that the school sites would be identified and they wouldn't have to negotiate price. We need now for the school district to step forward, just as you say, and make it their highest priority to identify those sites, clear the air, make sure the public understands what's going on up there, and ultimately put a shovel in the ground. I've got Councillor Hodge.
Well, absolutely. I mean, in some respects, this is good news because every time we have this discussion, I think we get a little closer to getting the schools up on Burke Mountain, the schools that we need, and we certainly recognize the work that's being done by both the school board and the city around Smiling Creek Elementary. But this, as Councillor Asmussen does raise questions, I recognize that this is a statutory requirement that this be brought forward, but I think that we have an obligation that goes beyond statutory requirements to make sure that the residents and the development community on Burke Mountain know what's going on. It has frustrated me to no end to watch houses go up around pieces of property that say proposed school site, now just to find out they were possible school sites, to find out they're probably not school sites. So that has been a real challenge up there, and I think that aside from the fact that we need schools, we're also trying to plan a community, and it's very difficult to plan a community when we don't have all the puzzles, pieces to the puzzle on the table and in place. So I think the idea of sending a letter to the school board is an excellent one. I know we've done that in the past, but we really need to sort of nail this down. Moving on to another area on this, as I've also recognized in the report that it mentions a possible school for the Fraser Mills area. That's a ways off yet, but certainly based on population projections, I think that does make some sense. But my other question would be the other area of our community that is going to experience a large growth, and that's Coquitlam. And recognize that I think we said the number was going to be 8,000 possibly new residents in Coquitlam, and this is going to be to Mr. McIntyre. We had discussions with them about schools in the Coquitlam area. I mean, we're going to see a large influx of people there. This report mentions Fraser Mills, but it's quiet. It doesn't make any mention of the Coquitlam. Do they believe they have capacity in that area for growth, or is that an area that we're going to have to look at as well?
Through to Councillor Hodge, yes, excellent question. We do have School District 43 representatives on the Coquitlam Lougheed Neighborhood Plan Public Advisory Group, or the PAG, which has met and will be meeting again in the new year. And through that, we're also consulting directly with the school district to ensure that their needs are reflected in the plan. They do have a number of existing school sites in the plan area that have a number of future possibilities, but again, that's up to the school district to look at, but they definitely are tied into the process.
So when we go, that plan is going to be coming forward to the public early in the new year. The planning process is beginning. Do we anticipate that they are going to want to identify school sites within that plan, or do you think that they will be looking to repurpose existing schools, or, as I said earlier, do they think they have capacity within existing schools to handle our population projections?
As far as I know from consultation with the staff reps, they do have the existing schools in the area, and they feel that land base is there. In terms of what they've determined, this ESSP identifies, I believe it's about 2,650 students for the new schools. but there's also 1,100 students that are part of the overall generation rate that will be absorbed by existing schools in the school district. So with that existing land base, it's possible those students can, through growth, could be absorbed through the existing school facilities or upgraded school facilities.
And I would imagine in the town center area, we're seeing, traditionally in Coquitlam, young families were in single-family homes, where we know that's not the case now, that we're seeing more and more families moving into multifamily type developments. We're even seeing now, families living in high-rises. And so some of those areas that we traditionally haven't had schools, I'm thinking town center and particularly Glen Elementary, that I guess in those cases they will look at expanding existing facilities as population in those areas grows then.
Yes, we'll also be ensuring that School District 43 reps are part of the upcoming City Center Area Plan update as well.
Great. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. I had similar questions, but another question I had was the Fraser Mills site for the school. In the report, it said that the city's feeling was it could be 0.65 hectares rather than 1.7. And I'm just kind of curious, similar size school to the other ones that are being proposed. Why such a small site?
Your Worship, through the chair, there is a bit of a story to this one. It goes back to the time when the Fraser Mills neighborhood plan was being prepared, and the thoughts around this new riverfront community and what the needs would be in that new neighborhood. The school district has standards that I guess are set by the ministry, applied provincial-wide. In this setting down at Fraser Mills, there was the thought, the desire that it would be a more urban, intense location. They're pointing to examples like schools in False Creek on smaller sites, but in combination with public open space as well. So through that neighborhood plan process, there was a tacit agreement to identify the site in the neighborhood plan for the school and the adjoining park. All along, though, the school district, because I guess, again, they have to follow ministry standards for school site sizes, and that's the basis for the SP, have held that size. So we flag that each year. They acknowledge that. I think as at the time that the development of Fraser Mills goes ahead, it gets closer to that, it'll be firmed up in terms of just the exact location of the school and the school site size that's necessary at that time.
But you mentioned there would be an adjoining city park? Like we're not talking about a combined school and park situation like these other ones.
In the neighborhood plan, there was, I'm just recollecting now, there was the area where the school site was proposed. There would be a park site there as well.
Okay, right. And then my other comment was just, again, sort of what Councillor Hodgett said in terms of these other sites. Until we know for sure, I think we have to make it really, really clear that we say, potential or proposed, because some of our materials said future middle school site in the past, and I think that really made people think that it was for sure. So I think everything that we do has to be proposed, potential, make sure people really understand that these sites are not confirmed yet. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill. Thank you.
I'm going to back to Burke Mountain and frustration over the lack of clarity from the school district on this one. I'm reading from a Tri-City News story dated December 2012. That's almost 2 full years ago. And at that stage, at that time, the school district released a report that said that a new Smiling Creek Elementary School could open by 2016. Now, we've just helped assemble the land on that, and I think that's going to be 2017 now, followed by Partington Creek Elementary School in 2021, a new Burke Mountain Secondary in 2023, then another new elementary school on Marigold Street in the Partington Creek neighborhood. They're very specific here, before a final installment, a 600-student middle school in 2026. So we know where the new Smiling Creek Elementary School is going to go, because we've helped assemble the land for that, and that's going to be a joint school park site. Is the uncertainty over where the school in Partington Creek would go. We know where the new Burke Mountain Secondary is going to go because the land is already there. And it's, they're very specific about the final elementary school. That's on Marigold Street. So, but then a 600-student middle school in 2026. So is the uncertainty the second and the fifth of those, the second one being the Partington Creek Elementary? We don't know exactly where that's going to go. The school district hasn't made up its mind. And the 600-student middle school, are those the two that we don't know about exactly? Is that where the uncertainty is?
Perry Stanisha has been working closest with the school board, and he can provide some clarifying comments in that regard.
Through your worship, although I'm not privy to the details, my understanding is that the school district has some preferred sites that they've chosen in the Partington Creek area, and my understanding, the news article that Councillor O'Neill has suggested there collaborates, my understanding, with the school district. And the two sites in question that Councillor O'Neill refers to, my understanding is, although I'm not privy to the details, that they're working on some sites in Partington Creek for those for the middle school and the other elementary school.
And are some of these sites that are still in play land that's currently owned by the city?
Through your worship, yes, one of the sites is owned by the city in Smiling Creek, and that's designated for a middle school.
And just one of those sites, okay. So you dealt with, so did you talk about the Northeast Coquitlam Middle School? Did you mention that? I'm sorry, the middle school is where again? And Marigold Street Elementary, so that's finalized. That's going to be Marigold Street in Partington Creek. That's the fourth of the five.
Through your worship, if you refer to the last page of the report that shows the actual map with the school sites that are designated, you'll notice if you look at the Partington Creek neighborhood plan, there are 3 elementary schools and 1 middle school that are designated in the Partington Creek neighborhood plan. My understanding is that the elementary school, the little circles that are yellow that are designated E and M at the northern part of Partington Creek are the sites that they are preferring. And then if you go to the Marigold site, which is the elementary school to the east of Partington Creek, is another site that they're preferring.
So all of these E's.
So clarification, that the 2 north of David,
yes,
are somewhat confirmed, and the one at the far east is the Marigold site that's also somewhat confirmed.
Through your worship, that's correct.
Somewhat confirmed. Okay, well, you know, I'm really looking for some clarity for the people of Burke Mountain and for the people of Coquitlam here, and I want to pass along to them as much information as we can in public. And there's certainly been a lot said about this in public, and here's a public map. But so you're saying now, in terms of this map, that not all of these E's are equal to the other E's?
Through your worship, that's correct. If you total up all of the E's on this map, there are, I believe, 5 E's on this map, and 3 out of the 5 are required, 2 are not. That's my understanding.
And so from your point of view, the 2 that are kind of not in play very much or not probable are which ones again?
Through your worship, once again, my understanding, once again, I'm not privy to the details, but my understanding is the elementary school that is actually in Upper Hyde Creek, immediately the western portion of Northeast Coquitlam. And then the elementary school that is in Partington Creek at the south end, that's labeled E with the circle as well. My understanding is those are the 2 elementary schools that are not required, and The reason for them not being required is that there were more designated sites that were required, and the Smiling Creek School site that the city has assisted the school district in assembling has been assembled, and so therefore there's not a need for the Upper Hyde Creek Elementary School. And then if you move over to Partington Creek, the elementary school that is north of David Avenue is what they're working with, and therefore the elementary school immediately to the south of David is not required.
And thank you very much. That helps clarify it. And in terms of the two M's then, were you able to, let's recap again. There was an M south of David, right on the boundary of Smiling Creek and Partington Creek on the Smiling Creek side, and then there's another M in Partington Creek just above David Avenue.
My understanding is that the M north of David in Partington Creek is the preferred middle school site over the middle school site that is in Smiling Creek south of David Avenue.
Good.
And if I could add to that, the school board actually told us that, in writing, that the site south of David Avenue was not required, and that is why last year we brought forward an OCP amendment to undesignate that site. But there was concern in the community that they didn't want to see sites undesignated until they saw more positive action on the sites that were designated. And so we stopped that process and said we needed to do more consultation with the community before we were going to bring that rezoning forward again. And that is a very high priority for us in these coming months.
Thank you for bringing that up, because that's where I was going to go next. And I wasn't sure exactly how to raise it, but you did mention that the school board communicated with us to that degree. Is that communication a matter of public record?
Yes.
And has that been made public?
What's that?
That letter from the school board?
No, it's still secret.
Well, I mean, is it on the public record that members of the public could see that letter where the school board says that it's expressed its preferences to us, and where would they find that?
Through your worship, I don't believe it was done via a letter. I believe it was done via a meeting. So there may not be a letter on file. It was done through
But we had a public report that proposed the undesignating of that site, and it was done on the understanding that the school board had advised us that that site was not their preferred site.
Well, the city manager said that there was a communication from the school board, and I would like to see that communication in the public record. I'd like to be able to point to it when people ask me about it. I think people in Burke Mountain, people who own land, the school, people who want to put their kids in school, they should know where the school board is going here, and we should have this as clear as possible. And I think this discussion tonight has helped clear it up, and I want people to be able to point to documents and say, well, there's that, that's that, because it does get a little confusing. And we're confused.
We will provide that clarity within the next 2 weeks.
Thank you very much.
So to be clear, we're talking about the middle school site in the middle of this map. It's right below that little white almost triangle, which is the fire hall on David.
Yeah, that's not preferred now.
That is no longer a site.
Not preferred. That's correct.
Yeah. And we do need clarity, and we'll get that. We'll make sure that document gets released. Councillor Zerillo.
Excellent.
Well, it's good to see these maps, and it's good to see movement on Burke Mountain. I just wanted to expand on something that Councillor Hodge said about Coquitlam. And I see some forecasts in here, and the high-rise units are up to 900 for some of the years. And just as a way to proactively gather information for our school district, I'm wondering if it's possible for the builders, the developers that have the high-rise buildings close to the Coquitlam SkyTrain station, to maybe start gathering some data for us about number of young children, those age groups. I'm not even sure if that's possible, but just to be able to validate for a school district whether their forecasts are matching what's truly happening, and the sooner we can get them the data, the better they can plan. Do you think it's possible to be able to do that, even if it's just for a year or two?
Mr. McIntyre.
It's certainly something we can raise with the Urban Development Institute as representatives of the development community. It'd be actually interesting to get their impression because I think, as noted, there has been more household families coming into the city centre and some of the multifamily than might have been expected. It's often after the fact that then you see the population that's there and the student generation, and that's then picked up in census data thereafter. But it's something we can take away and have a look at.
Mr. Johansson.
Just to add on to Mr. McIntyre's commentary, the Public Advisory Group, the PAG that I mentioned earlier for the Coquitlam Low-Heat Neighborhood Plan, does have a UDI representative on that as well. And we can make that one of the agenda items at an upcoming PAG meeting as a part of our discussion on the planned futures.
That would be wonderful, because I don't see the data quickly, but it did say something about 900 units on the high-rise, but then I think there was only 20-some kids or something, or a small amount of kids, and that may pan out, but it may not. And if we could get a jump start on that, that'd be awesome.
Mr. Johansson.
Yeah, just briefly, good observation there with the Table A3 and Table A1. Lots of numbers, lots of detail. The school district's consultant uses historical registration rates based on unit type to come up with that. And our projection also reflects the large amount of projects that are in the queue. But of course, that will change likely over time as the neighborhood changes, and we'll make sure that we have that as part of the discussion.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Reid.
Thank you. Thanks to Councillor Asmus, and I totally agree with what you had to say. You know, it's really difficult for the developers and builders up there because they give out a prospectus that tells new folks where the schools are and where the parks are, and it's all sort of projected. And we've done our part, and again, there's no buses and there's no schools, and that makes it very difficult, and people think it's sort of the fact that we haven't been planning right, and I say to you, we have been planning right. It's just we haven't had the goods that we need delivered. And the other thing I'd like to say about families, and we had this big discussion in my industry as well, when you're looking at a place like Coquitlam that's close to SkyTrain, we might get a lot of singles moving in there, but you get a lot of young couples. And in a one-bedroom and den, like over here in a couple of the big towers, you get babies, but by the time they reach 3 or 4, the folks want to move on. So the projection that you get right around the SkyTrain station and the high-rises slowly changes, because before they go to school, they move to another neighborhood, usually into a townhouse or something like that. So the projections, I guess they have a formula that they can work by when they're first moving in as to square footage and sort of who their prospective buyers are. But 3 or 4 years from now, when we need the schools, it can all change. Thank you.
Okay. The motion is the eligible school sites proposal, and a number of discussions. There'll be another motion in a moment. All in favor? All opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Councillor Asmundson's motion, I'll bring it before us now to write to the school district to express in our strongest terms the, I'm paraphrasing, but let's look for some action. Yes. Any further discussion on that? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
That's my one in.
Yep. Thank you.
Item 8, zoning amendment bylaw number 4511-2014 for Booth Farm at 1746 and 1750 Brunette Avenue. The recommendation is that Council give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 4511-2014 and refer the bylaw to public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Nicholson. Councillor Reid.
Thank you. I understand why we want this bylaw to go through to allow us use of the property, but it's sort of breaking my heart that we're not using the upper floor and the front part of it for some kind of an expansion of the things that are in Mackin House or some of the other heritage things we have. So hopefully we can discuss that a bit more at the public hearing, because I think that's really important. I really don't want to see that that house destroyed. It's just a beautiful place. Thank you.
Absolutely. It's a great acquisition for the city, and I think this at least gets us in the right direction. Further discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 9 is a zoning amendment application for 755 Miller Avenue, bylaw number 4520, 2014. The recommendation is that council give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw number 4520, 2014, and refer the bylaw to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Nicholson, second by Councillor Asmundson. First reading, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We'll have a public hearing.
That concludes the items on this evening's agenda.
Okay. Before we get to the inevitable motion to adjourn, I want to acknowledge tonight is Councillor Neil Nicholson's last council meeting. Next week we will have an inauguration of a new council. Councillor Nicholson won't be joining us next week on council, but I do want to acknowledge the years of service he's given to this community and certainly to this council. He was first elected to this council in 2007. He'd tried before, and he made it in 2007 and was re-elected, or was elected again, rather, in 2010, and has been on our council since then. He's served our community well. Here's an accountant who, with a long involvement in our community through various organizations like Douglas College and Fraser Health, but he's also given a tremendous contribution to this council. He has, I think, often been that second thought, that examination, closer examination of detail, that ability to truly look dispassionately at the reports before us, give it an accountant's eye in many cases, the eye of detail. And on behalf of council, I want to acknowledge those years of service and thank you very much for everything. And I pass the floor to you.
Thank you. We have managed that. Thank you, Your Worship. Before I begin in the best tradition of the provincial legislature, I want to note that my wife, Barbara, has sent our daughter Ann down here to make sure that I don't say the wrong thing tonight and to report back to her, because she knows that she'll get the straight goods from Ann. I have a number of things that I want to talk about tonight. Relax, May, you're not going home yet. I'm a little challenged because I forgot my glasses, and I've worked very well all day on all the great printed material that everyone gives me, and now I'm dealing with my own handwritten notes. There have been a lot of people who've been important to me during my time on council, and I'm going to deal with them in diminishing order of importance. And so the residents of Coquitlam, I have met and interacted with far more of the residents of Coquitlam than I ever could have hoped to had I not been on council. Those interactions have been varied, and they've mostly been encouraging and positive. And I want you to note that mostly is a word that I will be using quite a lot in the next few minutes. But I'm going to move from residents on to the staff of the city. And that's the only place that I'm not going to talk about mostly, because the staff of the city have without exception been professional, been great in supporting me and providing me with answers, and been quite unbureaucratically direct in giving me the best advice that they could throughout my time on council, and I appreciate it very much. Returning to the sort of mostly stuff, I was reflecting on the last period since inauguration in 2011. At that inauguration, the mayor, without notice to any of us, gave thumbnail descriptions of each of the councillors, and when it came my turn to speak, I referred to those descriptions as mostly kind. And that's a term that will allow me to move a little more quickly, because I'm not going to talk about a whole bunch of individual councillors. I'm going to talk about council as a whole. The council that I've served on, which changed a little over the time, but it's been mostly together. It's always been council as a whole acting together. I meant to go back through all the tapes and count up. I'm sure the mayor has a box score on how many times he was able to say passed unanimously, carried unanimously. He used to point it out to us at the end of every meeting if we were unanimous the whole way through, and that happened quite a lot. We worked together. And mostly we were collegial and cooperative and respectful of the differing views of others around the table. And that's been really important, and I've really enjoyed the last 3 years with these colleagues. And that's all about governing. But for the last several weeks, we've been campaigning, and I've said to all kinds of people, there's campaigning and there's governing, and they're, Lord knows, they're miles apart. They're very different. Campaigning is different. This campaign was challenging. It was difficult. It was occasionally combative. Of all the campaigns that I've been involved in over all the years, this campaign has unquestionably been the most recent. And I thought of that line this morning, and I thought, I stole that from Peter Legg, by the way. And I thought, well, that's a good line. That'll get a laugh. That's a bit of humor. But when I thought about it, there's a really important message here for all my colleagues on council, for those who will be joining this table next Monday, for all who were out on the campaign trail. That campaign was recent. It's over. And what's important to this city is that we all, at this table and out in the community, continue to work together to make Coquitlam the best place for anybody to live, work, and play. Thank you. And I would move adjournment, really.
Yeah, I'll take that last bit as a motion. Is there a second?
No, I want to talk some more.
Councillor Nicholson, do you have a motion?
To adjourn. Second.
Councillor Nicholson moves to adjourn, seconded by Councillor Asmundson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. We do have question period. Any questions from the audience on tonight's agenda, from items on tonight's agenda? Any questions at all? Seeing none, thank you all for coming.